toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls, who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance.
Well, welcome everyone. This is the first of a series of 10 classes called Becoming a Human Divine Being. Many of you have participated in our previous two series, Birthing Your Resurrection Body and Living in Your Resurrection Body. For those of you who are new to this, we would encourage you on your own time to watch some of the videos of the previous series. That's not required, but it'll be a very good help in understanding what we're presenting. So I'd like to begin with a quote from Hazrat Inayat Khan. Hazrat Inayat Khan says that the purpose of this whole creation is fulfilled in attaining that perfection, which is for a human being to attain, and that human may be said to mean God conscious, God realized, or God man, I'd say God woman. So that sounds pretty ambitious. But what Hazrat Inayat Khan was indicating in that is the capacity that every single human being has. And realizing this capacity achieves the fulfillment of the reason why each of us was created in the first place. So we're going to be coming at things from many different perspectives, many different angles, and we'll be weaving things together and reweaving. And it's our hope that as we go along, you will develop a deep understanding of this process that we're trying to convey. And we'll be working with many practices, but working with practices in a way probably different from how you're used to working with them.
So we thought at the very beginning that we would take a look at the objectives which we sent out to you and put them together in a more understandable composite. And so I thought about the first part of what we are aiming for is a change in the way that we see ourselves. We want to re-envision, in other words, who we think we are. A lot of the time we identify with our bodies, you know, this is me, I look at myself in the mirror and I have certain abilities and problems, and so we want to do some re-envisioning of what that is. And some of this will make sense now and some will make more sense later as we work with it. But we'll just put it together in this three-part process here. So the first part being who we are, you might say yourself, that we are multidimensional. This is evident to us in even thinking about our bodies and all the processes that they go through in order to keep us healthy and keep us alive. And certainly way more than that is our connection with nature and the way that we are blessed by others, by our friends, by beings in the past. And all these things go on, and much of it without us knowing anything about it, maintaining us. And maybe we'll become a little more aware of some of these and able to work with this ability of being multidimensional. Next is to be an imaginative, first of all, imaginative. So we worked last classes with the imagination, and we'll do more of that here too. Meaning imagination beyond what you would say of fantasy, but being able to focus in a different kind of way, use different abilities that could be thought of as unconscious, re-envision, remake things around us, think of new ways, create a new world. This is all part of the imaginative quality of us. And the next part is being a human divine being. We'll talk much more about what that is. But my favorite way of thinking about that is to be in a mystical union with the divine. Something that is hard to describe, but you know when you have it. Beyond thinking that we are stuck in a linear experience of time or space. So that now we are in touch with so much. This is important in that whatever it is that we're learning, whatever it is that that we're transforming, if we realize that we are in this mystical relationship, it applies to everything. So what you are accomplishing is shared with everything. So the next part is our unique contribution. Your role in all of this transformation is different from every other person's. Just as a part of the symphony, the violinist is important, and each member is important, and they are not the same. And what you do then accomplishes something for everyone again, but in your own way. And in fact, when you work with the things that we're bringing up, you're going to be doing it in a different way than anyone else. I'm happy that a lot of you have chosen to have buddies that you're going to be in contact with, because in some of these ways you'll be sharing your uniqueness with each other. And they'll go, wow, I never knew that that's what they were talking about. And that's really fun to think about that. Or this is very difficult to understand. Do you understand any more than I do? And we'll be helping each other out with that. But you're all unique. And the last part of yourself here that is your relationship with the earth. We've talked for a long time in our last series in regard to the Zoroastrian view that there are angels illuminating every aspect of nature and of beings in the world, and that we have a deep relationship with the earth in many ways. And this will be very helpful too when we think of the earth right now and how much that it really needs of us. And we are floundering thinking, how can I make a difference in this? But finding out that you are the son or the daughter of the archangel of the earth kind of puts you in a different kind of relationship that somehow can change the way that your own imagining and your own progressing can have a different influence on everything. Okay, so what about the substance of who you are, your body? As you think of your body, how can that change if you're a human divine being? Well, we're going to talk more about the different bodies as they define bodies in the 1,000 years ago in the Sufi tradition. But mainly, you would be changing the way you think about your body and having a sense of what the resurrection body is, which really is a composite of all that you have loved and all that you have grown and all that you have done in your life. So it's a matter of actually your own contributions, your own gifts, your own essences that you have created in your life. Becomes a kind of fabric. Those of you who are with us for a while remember the word Svarna, which is a light, but it is a light being, you might say. It's much more than just light, and that all the beings of the world really are made of this light being. But when we realize that, it makes a big difference. The same thing for everything I'm mentioning here. When you really realize what that is and can activate it, then you are actually inheriting, like Azarbash was saying something about that here, that you are coming into your own maturity as a being of the earth, who is a divine being. And that's what That's what we are asked to be doing. That's what Hazrat Inayat Khan had foretold what we would be doing. A little more about this fabric. If you think about what you sense as your own body and how you relate to the world, we think of, well, this is my body and I experience different things through my body. But we're learning from these scholars, these Sufis, that actually what you experience of everything in the world and everything your body has done is really an inner experience, and that inner experience is eternal. That does not die when the body dies. It's just the fabric, the actual molecules that pass away, but all that connection is there and then expands much more as we realize things in the deeper realms, in the higher realms. So that was the self and the body. And the last part of it is that we'll develop a unique process by which we re-envision, which we're using more for the word imagine. But we'll probably invent a new word tomorrow. You might tell me another one you like better. So we really want your input on all of this, you guys. But anyway, by which we imagine. And so what does this imagining or re-envisioning apply to? Well, it applies to things like assigning meaning to things. That's an important aspect, and you might change how you assign meaning to things as you progress along this path, this transformation into this divine human. Also opening connections to many things, beings, aspects, just opening those connections, bringing qualities in. We're going to do a wazifa, which is a sacred word, in a little while, and that was one of the qualities that we're speaking about. It's one of the names of God. But we can bring qualities to things just by thinking of those qualities or doing practices. And also can be bringing them, depends on who you're thinking about. You could think about other beings and bring those qualities closer to them. Other re-envisioning is honoring beings and honoring the archangels, and certainly honoring God, and also restoring energy to different places in ourselves, our health. These are all different aspects of the imagination or re-envisioning, a visionary creative process that we'll be working with.
So in the midst of this transformation, there are major shifts that are necessary. And there's a major shift in what you could call our frame of reference, our vantage point. Sometimes I call it our operating system. It's our modality of relating to everything that we experience. And the default setting for virtually everyone is a dualistic way of relationship. So our perception of ourselves is, I am what's contained in this physical form. I am the thoughts of my mind. I'm the emotions in my heart. I am this personality structure. And I perceive many things in the external world, but they're all separate from me. I'm not really directly connected with them. And I have my concepts about what they are. Some things I feel closer to than others. So that's where we tend to start from. But to move towards the place that we're aiming to arrive at, there has to be a radical shift in that vantage point. And what's interesting about it is it's not linear, step-by-step logical. In other words, you could read 5,000 books on spiritual awakening, and probably what you'll be left with is a headache, because that's not going to get you there. Those of you that remember Baba Ram Dass, one of his first little books was called Painted Cakes Do Not Satisfy the Appetite. You want to eat the cake, you don't want to just look at the recipe for the cake. So, in fact, that's what started me off in my spiritual journey. because I've always been interested in science, and I realized early on when I got to college that there was always going to be a limitation of what could be known through the typical modality of science, which is the objective observer in the white coat, separated from what they're experiencing. And then along comes quantum mechanics that shows the act of observation itself changes what you're measuring. So physicists have had to grapple with questions such as, is consciousness perhaps the most fundamental thing, more fundamental than even energy or matter? And realizing that things are very different than the way they thought in terms of time, or something in the present can change something that from our vantage point has already happened. So here's some shifts that take place. Our sense of ourself as going through this temporal linear journey through time, aging as we go along and the body changes and so on. We're born, we have our life, this body dies. And a lot of times we think, well, that's it. Well, we may believe something happens after we die, but we think there's this continuity that's just based on how we think of ourselves as moving along this journey. But what we discover, if we take to heart the teachings of the mystics, particularly in the Sufi tradition, and one of my favorites is Ibn Arabi, and he talks about something called bi-unity, bi-unity, and he says that we are human divine beings, and usually we don't realize that. It's something that we have to actuate. It would be like if you wanted to become skilled at a sport or at art or music, you couldn't just look at the pictures in the book. You'd have to go through the work and the training to develop that. So there's a training of consciousness. There's a training of how to experience things in a different modality. And the term that I use is called relational unity. So it's not separated, that's dualistic. And oftentimes in mysticism, the only other choice on the apparent choice on the menu is a unitive state where our personal identity is dissolved, we're merged in the totality, oceanic bliss, and so on. Sounds pretty good, but the fulfillment of why there's an existence doesn't take place in that. We weren't put here to just disappear back to where we started from. So relational unity is a way of maintaining the essential nature of our identity in a permeable relationship with whatever we're experiencing. So there's a circulation of energy, there's a circulation of light. And the Sufis say whenever two things come together in that way, a light upon the light, there's a third presence that arises. And we've probably all had experiences of this. When you've had a conversation with a close friend and you're just starting off with just kind of mundane things, but after a while, if you get into a deep discussion, ideas come to you that you never would have thought of and they never would have thought of, but it's arising because of the uniqueness of each of you in that relationship with each other. So there's terms that we've talked about before, but for those of you who are new, some important ones are Fana, F-A-N-A, which means annihilation. That's the traditional one, but I think of it as it's a shattering or a releasing of a previous way of being and understanding, in order that Baka, B-A-Q-A, which means the rebirth or the resurrection, can take place. And there's always the in-between part of that process when you realize the way that you looked at yourself in your life, that's not working anymore, and you're not quite sure where you want to get to, but you're in this place of being reformed, changed, transformed, and open to a different way of understanding, as Rabani Ra was saying, a different way of experiencing, and you're allowing that process to take place, and you're not just sitting there totally empty and passive in that. You bring to it a desire, an intention that you have, and we're going to be talking a lot about what we call the meeting place. The ancient term is Barzakh, B-A-R-Z-A-K-H, and it's that intermediate world in which what we think of as the human and the divine, or the manifest and the transcendent, can connect with each other. And we discover along the way that at first we thought that what was on the other side of that was something totally separated from us, because we're humans. We're just what's down here. But eventually there's a major shift in consciousness, and we realize we're both sides. We are the human side, we are the divine side, we are this never-ending relationship, and we're going to be talking about what unfolds through that relationship. So this idea of becoming a human divine being doesn't mean, well, you get there, you become fully awakened, you're done, you can just sit and retire in whatever concept that you might have. That's really just the beginning of a whole new way of participating in reality and existence.
So let's put some of these ideas on the road here. Let's go ahead and experience one of the qualities, one of the wazaif, the sacred words, in working with opening to transformation, opening to fashioning, is the word musawir. You spell it M-U-S-A, excuse me,
Okay, go ahead.
W-W-I-R, M-U-S-A-W-W-I-R, and it's pronounced musawir. The last part of it could be a rolled R just softly, or just say it like a regular R, musawir, and that means fashioner. So it is the aspect of the divine, which is also an aspect of ourselves, because we are in mystical union with the divine, that can change things, can make a beautiful new creation. It is said that in every moment, every instant, all that has been created actually goes back into the very first moment of creation, and is created anew. And so if we identify more with this mystical union and being one with God, then we can inherit this ability, and it's like it becomes more and more available to us as we realize it truly, that we are that son, daughter of God, that we are connected, we are in this mystical union with the divine, and we are the fashioners. So it comes from a way different place than just putting some things together to create something else. It comes from deep within us. So we're going to open to the possibility of it as we say the word. And that's one of the things that we learn from these words, that, you know, when we were kids, we learned about magic words. You could say abracadabra or something like that, make something happen. Well, it's not exactly the same way as we thought when we were kids, but it is drawing upon this energy, drawing upon the experience of many enlightened beings that have said this word. This is part of our multidimensionality I was talking about before, and owning that multidimensionality. That when we say this word, we are opening in many ways we don't even know. And so I'm going to ask you, as you say Musawir, to be saying it as you're welcoming this consciousness. And there's actually a word in front of it we say, which is Ya, Y-A, which means oh, or it also means like a greeting of this energy called Musawir, almost like a being of Musawir. And I'm saying it, I like to say the last part, Musawir, Musawir. So we say Ya Musawir. And every time you're saying it, you're opening to a relationship and to an experience. So I'll say it for a while, and then I'd like you to say it at the same time that I'm saying it. We're opening to this ability of the fashioner, the creative self. Ya Musawir. Ya Musawir. Ya Musawir. Join in. Ya Musawir. Ya Musawir, 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 Ya Musawir. Just pause right here. So every time you say it, think that now it's different than it was the last time. Instead of making a long chain of saying the same thing, it's evolving and you're evolving. Every time you say it, it's a totally different relationship. So open yourself again to that relationship and allow yourself to be changed every time you say this. Ya Musawir, 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 Ya Musawir. One more. Ya Musawir. Now we'll say another wazifa, another sacred word, and that one is Mawjud, Mawjud. Ya Mawjud. Mawjud means making God a reality. So this is the God incarnate, God within the world. And you are part of this God in the world. And things around you are part of God in the world. And especially the process of transforming and being is part of God in the world. So as we say, Ya Mawjud, we'll think about all that we've talked about already today about transforming and bringing God into the world rather than us elevating out of the world. And all the aspects that you can think of and that come to mind of creation, including birds laying an egg and plants becoming beautiful leaves and all the kinds of transformation of God into the world. So we'll say, Ya Mawjud, experiencing that energy. I'll begin and you join in with me. Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud. Okay. Ya
Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya Mawjud, Ya.
One more. Ya Mawjud. Now we're going to do it. That part was called zikr when you say it aloud. This part is called the fikr of the practice. That means you're breathing and you're thinking the words as you inhale and as you exhale. So in this case, we're going to inhale thinking just the word musawir, not the ya part. We don't have to say that aloud because we're not like greeting anyone on the outside. This is a silent practice. So you don't say the ya, but you think musawir, and as you exhale, you think mawjud. And the combination of these meanings could be that you're fashioning things in a different way so that God becomes a reality. It's like refashioning things to make God a reality, bringing God more into the world. So as you inhale, think musawir. As you exhale, think mawjud. Let's just do this for a while. Let's pause here. And now this is called the Fikr Asir, which means the secret of the practice. And what it is now just think without the words, think of the feeling of this practice. What is the essence of this practice? Amen.
So, as I said, we're going to be coming at this from many, many different perspectives. So let's look at the perspective of what a spiritual path is. So when we think of just an ordinary path in the world, what do we think of? It's already laid out there. Perhaps we need a map to see where it's going to take us to, but it's sitting there. And you mentioned a compass. So sometimes if we're in the wilderness, we might need a compass to get back on it or to be sure we're headed in the right direction. And that's the traditional way of thinking about what a spiritual path is. And we have sayings like, well, we've gone off the path, we've fallen off the path, we're back on the path again. But we're going to look at things from a different vantage point. So here's another big shift. The Sufis talk about alchemy, alchemical transformation. And there's what's called an alchemical process. And in the Sufis, there's different stages that we go through in this alchemical process. And there's even alchemical retreats. And some of us went on a beautiful retreat with Pirzia back in February on Mustang Island, where we went through different stages of this process. But traditionally, the way we relate to the alchemical transformation is here we are, and we're undergoing a series of experiences, practices, stages in order to arrive at a goal, a state of being at the other side of things, which in different traditions, the end zone, so to speak, is given names such as mukti, moksha, liberation, enlightenment, salvation, nirvana, the highest samadhi, and so on, as if that's the end of it. And traditionally, in many forms of spirituality, the whole process of existence is looked upon as there was a descent, the divine being set into motion existence. And the Sufis say, well, why is there an existence? And one answer is God was a hidden treasure, desiring to be known, to love and be loved. And so creation was brought forth. And so the typical way of thinking about things is, well, here we are, we've arrived at the state of human beings, human consciousness. And our goal now is to go back to where we came from, to return to the source, to merge back into the one. And that is, with different terms assigned to it, the purpose of many traditional forms of spirituality. Well, in the Sufism that was brought to the world by Hazrat Inayat Khan, the purpose was seen as awakening in life. What does that mean? It's much more so than just us awakening to a realization of a higher state of being. It's awakening of the divine in life. I mean, the fulfillment of the practice of Najud is we become the embodiment of divinity expressed in a unique way that can only come through each of our souls in existence. And something is birthed forth in this relationship between our manifest human self and the divine aspect of our being. The relationship between those two brings forth a creation. The Sufis say there's a new creation born again at every instant. And that new creation can only take place when we become capable on the human side of things of fully participating in that process. So let me segue to a little bit different way of looking at this. Some Sufis at least say that the divine being, God, cannot incarnate in existence, but God can be expressed. We can experience the divine being in existence through us. And the Sufis say that God conferred upon the human being a mode of existence, and we in turn confer upon the divine being a modality of knowing. And Ibn Arabi talks about this relationship between these two sides, each side of which is essential for the fulfillment of the purpose of the other. And we're not used to thinking of things in this way. The Sufis talk about things that at first sound kind of strange to us, like we are the knower, the known, the act of knowing. We are the lover, the love, and the beloved. We are the seer, the seen, and the act of seeing. Well, how can we be all three sides of it? Those different things. I'm here and I'm seeing you, and you're what I see. Those seem to be so separated, but a quantum leap in our understanding is all of this is us. We are all expressions of this one divine being in many, many unique names and forms. And instead of thinking of the alchemical process as something that's transforming just our human side of things into something on the other side, the way I think about it is the alchemical process is a never-ending process of evolution of our human divine being, of our human divine relationship. It's the relationship itself that undergoes alchemy. And through that alchemy of the relationship, what is possible to be discovered, to be known, to be expressed through the divine creative process, human divine creative process becomes more and more. And so there's no end to it. Ibn Arabi, when he talks about the new creation being born in every instant, he says each new creation is similar to what's been before, but never identical. So there's no repetition. It's always something new. And at first, we are the experiencers of what comes forth in this new creation, which is pretty wonderful. But later on, we become capable of participating in it. Pir Balaya would say we become capable of participating in the divine programming. And I would add to that, we become capable of participating in Musawwir. We become capable of participating in the divine art that's expressed in the relationship between the divine and the creation of the divine in the creative process. And what's on the palette of this divine creativity? Every single divine quality, beauty, compassion, wisdom, joy, guidance, truth, power. There's so many different ones. Each of these is an enablement of a way of relationship to connect up this relationship and to express it, to bring it to fruition in existence in a way that becomes new each time. And so something that we'll be coming back to, and Ravani Ra mentioned this when she described the practices she guided us in, when we work with these practices, we don't want to feel like we're just saying the same practice over and over again. And we really want to get past thinking that we are here saying this practice. And even we want to get to a deeper stage of thinking, well, we're bringing something down, somehow some quality is going to be imparted to us either from above or from within. These are all valid stages along the way of understanding, but at an even deeper level, we're engaged in this threefold relationship: the seer, the seen, the act of seeing, and so on. And all the parts of that are transformed with every repetition of a divine name. We are transformed, what is birthed forth through that relationship of our human and divine being through this quality is transformed, but the quality itself is actually augmented. So beauty itself now embodies more beauty than it did before because of what has been added to it through what could only come through us. Ibn Arabi says that every soul has access to a unique part of the divine wisdom that no soul ever has or will have access to. And I really take that to heart. And if I had one message that I could convey to others, it would be that each of you, every person has got something in their being that you have to offer to all of existence that can only come through you. And it comes through, as Ravani Rao was talking earlier, in a unique way. It isn't necessarily through what you think of spirituality is supposed to be about. It could come through in the work that you do. It could come through in the way that you relate to people. It could come through in some creative modality that you engage in. It can just come through your glance, the way that you convey your being in that deep connection with other beings, whether it's something in nature or another person. And now make one more loop in here. Those of you that were in on the previous series, we talked a lot about something called tawil, which means harmonic perception. It means, Pir Vilayat would say, seeing that which transpires behind that which appears. What happens with tawil when we're experiencing something else? It could be a flower, it could be a person, it could be something external, it could be in an inner experience with a higher aspect of our own being or some other great being. The only way that this process can take place is if we have opened up a way of experiencing that much fuller nature of our being, which is always there, but it's usually dormant and latent. Usually our consciousness is truncated in physical reality. We are multidimensional beings. We all exist in multiple levels of reality. And it's not just the mystics saying, as scientists, some great physicists say that physical existence is a simulation, kind of a holographic simulation of a 10-dimensional reality, that this is kind of our laboratory of learning how to function here. So gradually we can become capable of awakening to functioning in a much deeper level of our being.
So it's been wonderful listening to Azerbaijan. And I think you all know we've been together for almost 50 years now. And so we really harmonize with each other. And so I've been feeling all these things that he's been talking about. It's been very wonderful. And I wanted to add just one little thing that, so how do we decide? It's such a big story. So where do we come in on this story? We might say, we can't just do all of it at once. So how do we decide? Well, we look at our desire, we look at our love, we look at what it is that draws us, that pulls us into the story here, that pulls us into the world and makes us, sometimes it's what makes us feel very sad. And we want to help that. Maybe it's about an animal, let's say a dog, and we feel that we really want to help this dog. And this is part of your own development then, and it is part of your own awakening to find a way to be involved with the world and making it a better place, and at the same time bringing some of your abilities into the world that seem drawn into it. So these are some of the things that we're already doing in life, but we can start to see it as participating with the whole picture, with with perfecting. This is a wonderful word. I love this, and this again in the Sufi tradition, perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, we say in the invocation. And so what is this perfecting idea? Well, it is actually something that our own being goes through in the performance of something for beauty, for love. And it is actually, as he was saying, transforming the wazifa itself, the word, the quality itself, but also transforming the world itself through our own actions. And again, it's not only the actions, but it's who do you say is doing the action? Well, hopefully we'll say, well, from the very, very first understanding is that it is God who is performing this action. Okay, well then who are we in the process too? And we have to agree that we are the divine in manifestation, that we are a representative of the divine, that we are, and so everything keeps being transformed in this process, our understanding of ourselves, and then the world itself, even as we bring our accomplishment to a conclusion and maybe draw other people into the same assistance of these little dogs, or you expand your vision to include many other beings, and it just keeps evolving, but it evolves through our own compassion, our own desire, and that's what really is the guidance to our whole participation in life.
So there are so many entry points into this process of becoming a human divine being. And typically we think, well, the place to really go is deep meditation. Well, meditation is very important. Doing some type of regular spiritual practice is very important. But sometimes, at least for perhaps an extended period of time in our spiritual journey, there can develop a real dichotomy between our inner experience and our experience in the world. And sometimes we tend to think of our spirituality as helping with damage control, with what happens to us, going through all the things that go on in the world, recovering, and then getting back to a place of harmony and balance, which certainly is important. But there's a different way of going about things. And I've really believed for a long time that every single thing, circumstance, situation, without exception, is a potential portal, P-O-R-T-A-L, opening to the sacred. And that doesn't mean everything is just beautiful and you go, well, this is really just a divine thing. It may be the most awful thing that you really need to do something about and get involved and not just let it go by. But I talked about this alchemical process as a transformation of the human divine relationship. Well, when we can use our circumstances in life as opportunities of transformation in our way of relating to what's going on, our way of understanding what's going on, then we enable openings to take place, a transformation in what's happening, at least a space of possibilities or a catalyst for something to change. And we can't count on it, okay, I'm in this beautiful state, and why isn't this person acting nice? They're still acting horrible. They may not act one bit different, but your way of seeing something in them perhaps is going to help to trigger something that maybe will manifest in them 10 years from now. You don't know, and you can't be, as the Bhagavad Gita says, attached to the fruits of your actions. You're just acting from this state of conviction that, I mean, we're on the front lines of divinity becoming capable of expressing in existence, and it can only happen through beings in existence. It can only happen with this connectedness of this relationship, and that includes our way of seeing, our way of hearing, our way of perceiving, our way of experiencing emotionally what's going on. And with practice, we can make a shift more and more easily over time from Pure Light would call a sclerosed, just really narrowed down perspective to a very open one in which there's an allowance for understanding and compassion and beauty and realization and seeing possibilities that perhaps nobody else can see. And the more people that become capable of this state of being in the world, there's a kind of a field that develops from that. And because everything on a deep level is entangled, interconnected with everything else, when more and more beings become capable of this, something will happen. Something will happen much more easily in a transformation of how things are in the world. So I'd like to share another set of practices with you. And the first one is, again, we'll invoke it with Yah, Y-A-O, and it's Warith, W-A-R-I-T-H, which means our divine inheritance. Each of us has a divine inheritance. It's kind of like what's in our spiritual DNA, what we've been given in the essence of our soul, and each of us contains within us the seeds of all the divine qualities, but some of them come much more naturally to us. They're more predominant. We see that in people. Some people are naturally more expressive of light, or naturally more compassionate, and so on. But we have our own particular blend of these divine qualities. It's what we've been given to start with. So that's the first practice, and we'll say that together a few times. It's Yah Warith. So I'll say it a few times and join with me. And as you say it, feel like you're invoking and opening up the kind of the kitchen cupboard of possible ingredients for you to cook with. And how do you cook? It's how you be in the world. So it's Yah Warith. Yah Warith. Join with me. Yah Warith. 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 Once more. Yah Warith. And the second practice is Yah Wahabo, W-A-H-A-B-O. It's just a phonetic spelling. I'm sure there's other ways you could spell it. Wahabo, W-A-H-A-B-O. And Wahabo is the outpouring of divine qualities into life through you. And the image for this is, imagine you're standing on the bank of a river flowing from left to right, and the stream that is flowing in the river represents your divine qualities emerging. So the first practice was, what do you have in your storehouse, Warith, your divine inheritance? And this is how they are emergent in life. We're going to do this practice, though, with a different slant than you've probably worked with it before, those of you who are familiar with it. And those of you who are brand new, you can just do the first way of thinking about this, which would just be the image of being on the river. And let's try that, and then I'll explain the other way that you can think about it too. So I'll do it a few times. Yah Wahabo. Yah Wahabo. Yah Wahabo. Join with me. Yah Wahabo. Yah Wahabo. Yah Wahabo. Yah Wahabo. Yah Wahabo. Yah Wahabo. Okay. Now the more advanced form of this is, and usually the typical way of this is just thinking about the Wahabo as the qualities emerging in physical life. But because we're working on, through this series, and those of you who were in on the previous series, of realizing ourselves as multidimensional beings existing in many levels of reality, including the realm of the jinn, which is the realm of genius, and the angelic realm, the realm of the uncreated light, and the realm of pure spirit. So imagine now, if you want to do this form of working with the practice, when you say Wahabo, it's now the outpouring of your divine qualities expressed in each of those realms. So in the angelic realm will be what can be expressed in the angelic realm of beauty and innocence, of how your divine qualities bring something. And in the realm of pure spirit, the same thing, all the way down to the physical realm. So we'll put these two practices together, Yah Warith and Yah Wahabo. I'll say them together a few times and then join with me. Yah Warith. Yah Wahabo. Yah Warith. Yah Wahabo. Yah Warith. Yah Wahabo. Join in. Yah Warith. Yah Wahabo. Yah Warith. Yah Wahabo. Yah Warith. Ya Wahabo, Ya Warth, Ya Wahabo, Ya Warth, Ya Wahabo. Now we're going to continue, but as we've talked about, when we really jump in and experience the relational nature of working with these practices, even our divine inheritance is not the same with each repetition of Warth as it was before, because something's been added to it by all the fruits of all the experiences we've had in the previous instances of our existence. So it's like in every instant, it said the divine in-breath goes back to the origination of everything, and then the next breath is the new creation. So what's brought back on the next divine in-breath is what's been transformed through us, through our fulfillment of our purpose in existence. And now what pours forth of Wahabo is more than what was available to pour forth before. So feel like this is just uh, unfolding and changing both sides of it. So we'll do it some more. Yahweh, 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 Yahweh. Once more. Yahweh, Yahweh. And then the fikr silently on the breath. Think Wareth as you inhale and Wahabo as you exhale. And then the fikr asir, the secret of the practice, without thinking of the words or even the meaning of it, just experience this essence, this unending process, your divine inheritance being expressed through all the levels on which you exist and renewed at every instant to become even more than what was there before. Amen.
Amen.